Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast for men and women at mid-career or the halftime of life with issues that concern you. Maximize your skills, resources, and experience to live an even more fulfilling and significant second half of life. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson, on Women at Halftime podcast. Well, hello, Deborah Johnson here for Women at Halftime podcast. I'm always excited to do another episode, and today is no exception with our subject. Is it an excuse or a good reason? Now, I'm going to define excuse and a good reason, and I think this is a little bit of a good time of the year to do it still. We're at the first quarter of this year, and people go, setting goals, is it really worth it? Of course, resolutions are just out now. Nobody wants to do resolutions anymore, but people are still full of excuses and good reasons for not moving ahead in life. And I'm going to talk about some of those reasons today and some of the ways that we can overcome that. So it's just a great little subject. I think very, very appropriate for this time of year. And I also want to remind you that still the book, The Summit, Journey to Hero Mountain, make sure you're getting your copy. I will run from time to time the chapter a day, so you can kind of see a little bit of that synopsis, and those are always fun to click in on social media. So let's get to our subject here about excuse or a good reason. So I'm going to define excuse first. An excuse, it's defined to lessen the blame or to get out of a duty, right? We've all used them. And it's also usually full of defensive language or a blame. There's an attempt to explain why something has or has not been done. Well, how is that different than a good reason? Well, most of us, myself included, we tend to want to give a good reason instead of an excuse to justify a particular action or a lack of action. A good reason is a word that's more readily accepted. And it sounds so much more palatable when a project or task has not been completed. I mean, if you've had kids, you have heard a million excuses, right? Well, here we will approach three areas using kind of a straw man as our scapegoat. Now, a straw man is like this weak or imaginary figure that can serve as a cover for actions. And you might find yourself in that position of that straw man as we create our scenarios. Well, our three areas are avoidance, procrastination, and neglect. So let's talk about first avoidance. If you stop to truly analyze your life or even your previous year, you may be surprised to find how many times you have created an excuse to avoid a situation. Well, I can go clear back to my dating relationships in my life. Now, believe it or not, we weren't always able to see a phone number pop up on our screen, right? Some of you with me here? So when I knew someone I didn't want to talk to was going to call, I just hoped my mom or my sister would answer the phone. Although sometimes that backfired with them saying, "Oh, she's right here," as they handed me the phone. Well, that was usually followed with a grimace. Well, now present day avoidances, they're much more serious. Avoiding a medical test that could have saved a lot of future problems. I mean, that's a big one right there. And I think of my mother, who avoided mammograms for a number of years until she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Now, fortunately, she was able to recover, but not until she had to undergo pretty intensive treatment that greatly changed her quality of life. Avoidance. Many relationships and marriages, they suffer because of the avoidance of good communication and conversations. There are great books like Crucial Conversations by Patterson, Grenny, Macmillan, and Switzler, and even Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss with negotiation tools. Those are very helpful resources. There's seldom a really good reason, I should say seldom, not never, but that's fully justified for completely avoiding important conversations. It's merely an excuse. So I'm sure you can add many more items to the area of avoidance in your life as you look at whether it's an excuse or it's a reason. They're very, very similar right there. So, take some time. I'm going to encourage you to do that at the end of this session, this podcast as well, to take some time to really evaluate your own life with what you are avoiding. But we're going to go on to procrastination. Love this one. Procrastination is the enemy of completing projects. And it means to be slow or late about doing a project that should be done, to put it off until later, either because you don't want to do it, or you're just too tired, or, you think you can get it done quicker at another time, right? How many times have you put it off? Well, I always think of that famous line by Vivian Leigh in Gone with the Wind. It's one of my favorite little movies to rewatch now and then. And it says, after all, tomorrow is another day. Remember that? And what about the quote from Abraham Lincoln? You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by avoiding it or evading it today. Well, that's a statement that rings true time and time again. Well, surely you can put off doing laundry, cleaning the dishes, or getting that report in, but there will be a reckoning. And you'll have no clean clothes. The dirty dishes will pile up, and you may even get ants and rodents. Ooh. And as for that report, getting that report in may be the difference in you getting that promotion or that raise. Well, I'd like to apply this to entrepreneurism, and that procrastination is real. As a lifetime entrepreneur, I understand very well the temptation to put off projects that are not as fun, such as cleaning my office or writing and cleaning up weekly articles. Who's really reading them anyway? And searching for studio charts, I would love to find those charts so I could put out new sheet music. I couldn't even say that right now. Well, this is on my mind now, as I was glad I did not procrastinate in filing those music charts, those studio charts, in a place that I could locate them. In fact, this really applies well, because I was actually surprised I found them and was like, oh, I followed through. I put them in the right place and in the right file. Wow. And it makes your life just so much easier just to not procrastinate and put off the important parts. That's part of my purging per year, usually, that I do with my office and some of the cleaning of my files. But it's so easy to put off those things, to procrastinate. And when you are an entrepreneur, you have a home office and you're working maybe remotely now, oh, wow, is it easy to do? It is very easy just to keep putting off those little stacks, because now you have other things kind of vying for your time. Well, let's keep going on the principle of even writing books, because I know there are many people who love to write a book. Donald Miller of StoryBrand, he has a daily writing schedule that he adheres to in order to finish his goal of writing books. In fact, I think he likes to put out a book every other year. And it's his morning routine And by sticking to it, he accomplishes his goal. He has a set period of time where he doesn't take any interruptions. Well, let's get to number 3, neglect. Oh, all of these are just very, very applicable. And neglect is an excuse that's usually fairly apparent. When a neighbor, they neglect their lawn, and when they're letting it grow too long, or when it turns brown, we can usually visually see that neglect. Well, there might be a reason for this if that neighbor has been out of town or there's an emergency situation. But for many, they let neglect creep in as a characteristic and a pattern of their life. There are also those who are just too tired or depressed to even throw away trash or old belongings. They then become hoarders, or their homes will be filled with harmful and even toxic waste. I have a little example of this, actually. There was a woman that my mother was caring for. She was one of those just kind souls that would find, I don't know how she found this little particular woman, was living all alone, had so much furniture in her house, she could hardly even get by. I mean, there were just these tiny little areas to squeeze by. And she ended up helping this woman for a long period of time until actually she even passed. But people like that, they need help. She was older, but she couldn't throw away anything. And when even my parents passed, we found some things. We wondered, where did these come from? We found this very, very old Bible. It was from, I think, the end of the 1700s with all of the family trees and everything, the 1800s with the family trees in there. And we figured these might have come from Francis, from that house where so many things were stashed. Now, this can also become a problem with many, of course, with health risks because of hoarders. They're filled with harmful and even toxic waste, those homes. We've seen some of those examples on those shows like Hoarders on Netflix or on other TV shows. And it's painful to look at the situation of those they're unable to part with even the tiniest possession. And it ends up being somewhat of a mental illness, but it's often ignored with neglect because of the connotations involved in that term of mental illness. Well, neglect applies to the previous excuses named of avoidance and procrastination. They all link together. And the neglect of health issues and the neglect of relationship communication, even the neglect of making an important change that you know should happen with your job or with your location or even your personal priorities, those can all hold you back. Finances? Oh my goodness, are you neglecting your finances? Well, let's talk here how to get beyond an excuse. I want to give you some proactive things you can do. And the best advice I found is to develop a good routine and start with the most difficult project first. Now, you may only need to spend 5 or 10 minutes at a time, but start that routine. A good book to help you with this is Tiny Habits, where even one small action associated with another, they can start you on the road to adding a healthy habit. And if you've not listened to the podcast I did with Linda Fogg Phillips, make sure you listen to that. With regards to eating habits and physical exercise, your physical health, it's never been more important. Diabetes and high blood sugar, those have been shown to increase complications from illnesses, even like COVID-19. There's a great article in the New York Times called How Exercise May Help Protect Against Severe COVID-19. Now, this is written in 2021 or 2021, yeah, that was it, after a study which involved almost 50,000 Californians who developed COVID, and they found that those least likely to be hospitalized or even die were physically active with regular exercise. And this was before vaccines, and it's not really a substitute, but the study readily applies to many other illnesses as well, whether the flu, cold, or other viral infections. So an excuse, it's not a good reason for putting off your future. And now is a good time to take out that journal and start writing down your thoughts. In fact, what excuses have you been making that you've been just reasoning away, justifying, oh, it's okay to put that off? Well, you can also avoid eliminating peripheral activities that are holding you back. A good book to read on this is Essentialism. I've got these notes and all of these links in the articles that come with these podcasts. And this is a great book. I have reread this book for the last several years, every year. And when you're writing in your journal, define what is essential and then what is not essential in your life. And I think it might help you get beyond any excuse to move ahead in your life. This is a really great exercise. And by focusing on what's most important and cutting out what's not, I've really done quite a bit of that this last year. You will have the energy and make the time for doing what you truly want to do and love to do and feel called to do. In the book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, sounds morbid, but it's not. It's a great book. The number one regret was not having the courage to live a life true to oneself. And I don't want to have that regret, and I would never wish it for you. Get beyond any excuse and live a life true to yourself. Really take the time to do this. One of the best things that you can do right now is to take out that journal. Just write a couple lines. Write a couple thoughts about what sort of excuses are you making and what's really essential in your life. I've scaled down the programs that I'm offering, way down actually. And I've realized I love to be doing more visual presentations. I'm putting out more media because I have so much product. But there's so many songs, there's so much that I've not been able to produce because I've been so busy just doing these programs and doing extra webinars and doing things that I felt like, other people can do those. I have some unique qualities and gifts that I'd love to be able to continue doing for the next 20 years. Love doing what I'm doing. Developing a new speech, which I've also done. And that takes work, it takes crafting, it takes time. So spend the time now doing some journaling, taking some time to really figure out what you really love to do and not spending the rest of your days with that sort of regret that you will come back to and say, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself. Take that time to really love doing what you're doing and following that path of routine and putting together all of the things that you feel called to do with no excuses or very few excuses. We all will continue to have some sort of excuse somewhere, but for a lot less excuses this year to keep moving forward with your life. It's been such a pleasure being with you. Make sure you join us next week. I have a wonderful live interview with a senator, which is a little unusual. I don't like to get too involved with politics, but this was very interesting. Who would ever want to go in politics? So we're going to ask some of those questions, and I think you will really, really enjoy what we have for you next week. And every week there's an article as well, so make sure you click in onto that. And I really look forward to every single week being with you, and I hope you've enjoyed today. It's not been an exception for me. I love doing what I'm doing, and I love the podcast platform as well. So stop making those excuses. Even stop making those good reasons. They're just not good enough.
and move forward with your life. Deborah Johnson here. You can connect with me anytime at womenatalhalftime.com. Of course, I have many other websites, Deborah Johnson Speaker, goalsforyourlife.com, djworksmusic.com, and I will look forward to being with you next time.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. Share and follow us for new shows to inspire you and encourage you in your life's journey. You can find all of our articles and links at womenatalhalftime.com.